Hello crafty friends, it's Donna here. Donna is playing paper. I've got a set of 4 cards for you today, which cover all 4 seasons using one sketch. Today, in Japan, it's spring. In 2 days' time, it will be summer. And then, within the month, I'll be back in Australia in winter. And so I thought this was a fitting set of cards. I've drawn up a sketch for today's card. I wanted to make sure that my sizes worked. And so I'm using the die that I'm going to use for today to help me make my sketch. This is the background for the abstract trees die. And there's a front piece which has the branches on it. For today's sketch, I want to have a strip of paper across the middle, a sentiment at the bottom, and the 2 trees. And then I'm going to mix up the colours and the techniques to get the different 4 seasons. To begin with, we're going to do a very basic card, just to show you what the die is. I've chosen a mottled green paper for my background and white for my stems to show spring. And then I'm going to use some dark green paper for my background. The sentiment I want to use, the sentiment I wanted to use was too wide for this. So my second choice of sentiment was this happy birthday, which fits perfectly into the space. And I'm going to stamp this on all 4 cards in a production line at the beginning. I'm not going to show you the making of all 4 cards. I'll show you how I made the first card, and then in each of the subsequent cards, I'll just show you anything that was different. I'm gluing the trees down to my 2-inch wide strip of paper, which is not yet attached to the card. Because the trees hang off the top and the bottom, I'm going to need to prop up, especially the tree trunks, with 2 layers of card so that behind them is the same height as the rest of the card. Once I've done that, I'm then going to put foam tape on the whole background, including some teeny tiny bits on the stems and on the top of the tree. And that really is the basis of the card. I'm going to add some gems for a little bit of further interest so that I don't have that big white space there. But that's our starter card. There's spring. Moving on to summer, I used almost the same techniques, except that this time, being summer, I added some butterflies that I'd cut from a patterned yellow paper. I also made the tree trunks brown. I'm popping the butterflies up with foam tape, and let's move on to some of the other cards that have some more techniques. To make the autumn card, I've started with a piece of watercolour paper. I've upped the level of difficulty by having slightly dirty paint water and my green tea right next to each other. So I'm going to take a sip of green tea so that I'm not thirsty during the painting and I don't muck up. I'm using some water gems for these paints and mixing those up. Especially the brown needs to be mixed, because those watercolour powders are made up of granules of different colours, and none more so than the brown. Before I spatter this onto the paper, I'm spattering some clean-ish water into the centre left of my card. I want that area to behave slightly differently to the rest. So where my yellow paint and my subsequent paints hit that area, it's going to spread out and create a little bit more of a wall of colour. Once I was happy with the yellow, it's time to move on to the orange. For a while there, I thought I might live dangerously and tap the orange paint into my paint tray, but in the end I chickened out and used the back end of my brush. As I go through the colours, I'm using less of each colour, so that there's a little less orange than yellow, and least of all of the brown. Once I finished that panel, and it's still very wet because of all the water I spattered, I'm going to put that aside to dry. When it's dry, I can cut it down to size and we'll get on with constructing this card. Unlike the other cards where I stuck everything together with glue, I'm using double-sided tape for this watercolour panel because the watercolour can warp the paper and the double-sided tape will hold it down nice and flat. This time I'm not using both parts of the tree. I'm only going to use the branches so that we can see that beautiful spattered background coming through. Once again, I need to prop everything up behind, only this time I need to be very careful and use very thin pieces of tape and paper. Let's move on to the winter card. This time I'm going to make some little shaker trees. To do that, I'm cutting some silver cardstock, which has double-sided tape behind it, and a sheet of white cardstock, which has double-sided tape on the front of it. I'm just using old packaging, and it can't handle any liquid glue. And so these two layers of double-sided tape are going to stop that packaging from getting wet. There are too many branches here, I think, to make a really good shaker. And so for the back layers, I'm going to cut out a lot of those branches so that I have some bigger areas to put my shaker elements in. Once they've been removed, I'm going to line that up and stick it to the front with double-sided tape. Then I have another 2 white pieces, which I've also cut those branches out of, and I'm going to glue those on with a liquid glue and then put a block on them to hold them flat. Now we have 2 beautiful channels that we can put our shaker elements into. I'm going to use this white sparkle glitter. Before I put it in, I'm going to add my glue. Once the glitter's in, I don't want to move the card. Once I'm happy with the amount of glitter, I'm going to add that background piece. I'm using my fingers to feel underneath that as I lay it down to check that I have a similar border all the way around. That's why when I turned it over, it was already lined up pretty well. Once that's glued down, I'll pop a little bit of weight on it to hold it flat. Then the construction is exactly the same as the spring and summer cards, and I'm even adding sequins the same way to make this winter snow tree shaker card. So there you have it, 1 card sketch, 1 die, 4 cards. I hope you've enjoyed this little series, and I look forward to sharing some more cards with you soon. Feel free to like and subscribe, and I'll be back again with some more cards. Bye for now.